You'll push him away if you try too hard. Do this instead. So in this training, in this video today, we're going to be talking about all the principles that cause a man to want to come closer, to want to commit to you, and how it'll actually push him away if you are trying too hard, if you are too desperate, too aggressive, chasing him, pursuing him potentially, which we want to avoid. So I'm Brody Boyd, the lovely Antia, and we've been doing this work for over 20 years, helping successful women attract the right man for them. And today we're joined by our special guests, Janelle and Frankie.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So we're going to be going deeper into these principles through Janelle and Frankie's story. They're going to be sharing with us how they actually met, how Janelle attracted Frankie, what made him fall in love and want to put a ring on it. So
it was easy.
And then before you lost the ring, but then refound it.
Well, that's a different story.
That's a different story. Janelle told me today. But yeah, so let's go ahead and start from the beginning with your guys' relationship. I want to hear how you guys met each other, and particularly, maybe you can start, Frankie, actually telling your version of the story. What drew you to Janelle when you met? What were some of the things you noticed? What was different about her? And then we're going to dive deeper into that.
All right. So you want me to start with what initially attracted me to Janelle, or start with their story?
Met, kind of the brief journey of how you guys met, and what were some of the key moments you remember where you're like, wow, this woman's different, and anything she did or that you noticed that drew you in?
Yeah. I'll share my side. Janelle's better at telling the whole story. So if you want to get into the whole story, you got to ask Janelle. But I'll say my history of dating was I just get in one relationship after another, and wasn't really like intentionally thinking about what I necessarily wanted. And this was, transparently, it was before I was following God. So I was just doing whatever the world, quote unquote, would say. And it was just, dating, having sex before marriage, kind of going the way of the world. And I would say for me, it's like when I really started prioritizing my relationship with God, first and foremost. I ended up getting baptized in 2017. Really started to get discipled by some great mentors that I met back in Denver, Colorado. And then I met Janelle through a business mentor of mine in a mastermind that I was a part of. And he and his wife met Janelle at an event that she went to called Organifi here in San Diego. I was living in Denver at the time. Mm-hmm. And what stood out, there's a much longer story of like how we met, but what stood out for me with Janelle is that every other relationship I had prior to Janelle was like very needy, very, like you said, kind of like chasing after like desperate energy, jealousy, like, oh, what are you doing? What's going on there? Like very unhealthy. And then Janelle, it's like, meet Janelle, and you'll see as we go out, she's a very confident woman. She knows what she wants. She is going to be fine with or without a man. So it was like this thing where it's like, oh, I get to like pursue her and really love her well. And like, it made me step up as a man to actually attract a woman of high value like Janelle.
Wow. Awesome.
Aww. I love you.
I love you.
Beautiful. And when you were in these first stages of you guys both dating, what was your mindset, Janelle? Like when you were first in the process with Frankie, when you met each other, what was your overall mindset, your approach that allowed you to not be trying too hard and to be in your confident, high value, womanly, energy? What was that mindset?
Yeah. For me, it's all about just really knowing your worth and knowing what you bring to the table. It doesn't mean, I'm not perfect. I wasn't perfect then. It's not about perfectionism, but it's just knowing what you bring to the table, and even knowing what you don't bring to the table, and being unapologetic about your strengths, and even your, what I call it is like lesser strengths in my teaching. And so, it was cool because like Frankie was saying, when we met, the reason why we met is because I met a couple at a networking event. It was my very first time ever meeting them. And it's funny because I had a reel this like a couple weeks ago that went super viral about this. And so everyone is like, I need an Amanda. But basically there's a woman named Amanda, and her husband was Nicholas. And I said to them, I was like, hey, like, you guys have this like men's networking or men's business group. Do you have any men who love Jesus, tall, dark, and handsome, works out a bunch, entrepreneur? And I just asked for what I wanted within literally 10 minutes of meeting like strangers at a party. And they're like, actually, yeah, we do have someone that we think would be a good fit for you. And so they introduced us on Instagram. And so one of the big things that I teach women is like, not only do you have the confidence to attract, but you also got to be willing to ask for what you want and be willing to put yourself out there. And that's like, because when you're so confident, you don't have that fear of rejection. So like, let's say that they said, no, we don't have anyone for you. For some people, they would take that as honest rejection. They'd be like, oh, well, now I can't believe I just asked. It was so embarrassing. They don't even have anyone.
Never going to ask anyone
Yeah,
again.
I'm never going to ask again. No, for me, it was like, I was like, they say you miss 100% of shots you don't take. Like I was just taking shots left and right, It's freaking Michael Jordan over here. I was just like, I'll just keep putting myself out there, taking shots. And like, I wasn't offended if people, like if guys weren't reciprocating, that's fine. No problem. There's more shots to be taken.
And I love also, you're really talking about sort of almost the feminine intuition. Because I do feel like asking someone, I happen to know Amanda and Nicholas a little bit, like, you asked like a very special couple, right? So I also thought like, because you were so high vibrational and you were carrying yourself in that high regard, you also, got it reflected in your outside world, right? And so these opportunities were presented to you.
Yeah. Your external world is always going to be a reflection of your internal world. So to your point, exactly.
Yeah.
And what I'm curious about is, so you were so really committed to the process, it seemed like, with finding your man.
Yeah.
And so how did things shift when you're asking people, even people you just met, do you know of a man for me? And then all of a sudden you meet Frankie. How did your mindset shift, if at all, from going to this committed to the process to where you weren't trying so hard with him? What was your mindset when you actually, if it shifted at all, when you actually met Frankie, or was it the same? Did you go into like, oh, this is my man and I need to act differently now? Or like, this is just kind of, I was expecting this and I was ready?
Yeah. And I guess it's because it's interesting because we're talking about like not trying so hard. And I think that there's like two different things, because then you just said that I was trying so hard to find my person. And so I feel like we almost need to like define what trying hard means, because I was taking intentional action, but I don't consider taking intentional action as trying hard to find someone, because you can take intentional action without having desperate energy. You can take intentional action while being a confident queen, knowing your worth and asking people if they have anyone to introduce you to. You can be on apps, doing dating apps. Like that doesn't mean that you're trying too hard. But trying too hard to me is like an energy that's desperate, an energy that doesn't know her worth. That's like, I need to find this person in order to find my happiness, in order to fulfill me. And so, I just wanted to clarify that, because to me, it's like, I didn't ever really feel like I was like in this place where I was trying so hard to find my husband. I guess actually I would say when I had lower confidence, when I was like in my early 20s, I probably was a little bit more in that place of like, I need to meet my husband. And then there was a little bit of that release where I'm like, I want to meet my husband, and I'm still like open to it and wanting it and taking action towards it. But the desperation, I think once the desperation goes away, I think that's when you're most likely going to meet your person. And then to answer your question about with Frankie, yeah, when him and I, so we followed each other on Instagram for 6 months before we ever met in person, and we were both dating other people. So for the first 6 months of knowing him, we were just like, he was my Instagram crush, but I was like dating someone else who wasn't a great fit for me. And he was dating someone else who wasn't a great fit for him. So we were kind of just like Instagram pals. There really wasn't anything like inappropriate happening. Like literally, he would sometimes respond to my story, and then I would respond back and try to ask him a question, and then he would leave me on red.
I didn't know she was flirting with me.
Yeah, he didn't know that was me flirting. And like he would leave me on red on a regular basis. Like so that was kind of like our thing. He would respond to my story, I'd reply back, and then try to like engage in a conversation, being like, well, what do you like to do? Or what's your favorite this or whatever? And then he would just read, and I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. But I didn't know he was dating someone, because he wasn't posting about her on his Instagram, and he didn't know.
Red flag.
He didn't know I was dating anyone, because I wasn't posting him on my Instagram. So we both didn't know the other person was dating anyone. But then when Frank and I went on our very first date, to answer your question, like we just knew so quickly that we were really into each other, and he was very much like making me feel safe and secure within that. So I knew I was really into him. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's like amazing. We had this incredible first date that was like 24 hours long here in San Diego. He flew into Denver for work, and then went and did a workout together, and then we got a Cali burrito together, and then we went out that night together, and then we went and got coffee the next morning together. So we just kept hanging out. We couldn't get enough of each other. And right before he was leaving to go to the airport to fly back to Denver, he said, so are you moving to San Diego or am I moving to Denver? So we kind of knew basically like at the end of this first like 24-hour date, like we were obsessed with each other. We were so into each other, and he like let in that. Like I was kind of like, well, what if when he drives away and goes to the airport, like maybe he won't text me. He texted me within like 10 minutes. He wasn't trying to like play it cool. He was like, I don't know how I'm going to focus on work today. Like I had so much fun with you.
Showed all my cards.
Yeah, he showed all his cards. And so we just like let our walls fall down really quickly. We were vulnerable with each other, and he created like a space for me to feel all of those things too. Because if he didn't text me or if he wasn't saying the things he was saying, I generally I would match the guy's energy generally, but I was really into him, and then his energy was like really into me. And so we, it just like was very easy.
And what was it for you? Like, tell us some specifics, Frankie, about like what happened on this date that like, because we're talking to mostly women here who are like, the guy needs to think about it, needs to wash his hamster's hair 6 years later. I mean, we have like the craziest stories, right?
Yeah.
But the guy's like, I need to find myself first. I need to, what I mean?
Delay.
Sell my house, buy my house,
Taking a
just.
Yeah.
What was it for you that just happened in 24 hours? Because you just had another friend couple
where you
go
were
through
so
a similar
clear.
journey. And what was it for you that you just like
This is
I
what
just
I
know.
want.
I don't need to think about it. I need to pray on
a
it.
good
I need
question.
to,
I mean, I think it was just, so backstory before that first date is, again, like I said at the beginning, I was really like on my faith journey, going through that whole process. And I was trying to break that cycle of like not continuously dating women just to date women, because I had codependency issues and different things like that. So one of my mentors and pastors at the church was like, why don't you just focus on a full year of like going all in on God and like learning more about God and learning more about what the Bible says, learning more about yourself. So I think that was like, I don't know, 3 months or so before I flew into San Diego from Denver for that work trip where Janelle and I first met. And I think it's because I had that space of like the theme that I think you'll hear from Janelle is it's not about necessarily like doing certain things. It's about becoming the person that attracts the other person. So I would say it's because of God first and foremost, but because I was leaning into like finding myself, what I cared about, what would be good for me. And then when Janelle and I had history of like being friends for a year or so, and I knew her character, I knew her heart, I knew like what she was all about. But then that was like the first time we ever like really spent time together. So it kind of like clicked for me. I remember we went to Ocean Beach here in San Diego. We did a workout together. We were like playing in the water, like super romantic kind of stuff. And then we went and got burritos at Mike's Taco Club. And she was like sitting in front of the ocean. I was staring at her. The sun was setting. Reggae music was playing. We were eating our awesome burrito. And I just remember like having this moment. I'm like, why is this girl just my friend? Like, what am I doing? If I don't pursue her and like immediately tell her how I feel, like I could lose this opportunity, because I knew that she was so high value. And it's not like I didn't feel, it wasn't a desperate thing. It wasn't like insecure thing. I just knew, I was like, she's not going to be single for much longer. So I guess to answer your question, it just was like, I put in the work on myself, and I just was like, why am I playing any more games?
So when you said you knew that she was high value and you felt she wasn't going to be single for much longer, what made you think that? What made you feel that?
Because she was a catch. I mean, she is still, but she was driven. She loved God. She had the same values that I had. She was well networked, like in San Diego. She had big dreams. She came from a good family. And even if she didn't come from a good family, she was working on herself. And so any person like that is gonna, if you're looking to get married, like I would assume you're not gonna be on the market that long. So it wasn't like I didn't think all these things consciously in the moment, but it just was like this subconscious thing where I'm like, why am I screwing around here? Like, let's move forward. And it was just like, it was all, again, I keep coming back to it, but if you can't tell, God and Jesus is so important to us. And I know it is for you guys too, but it was this like supernatural peace that I had never felt before.
Supernatural peace.
And I think you only get that from spending time with God, spending time in prayer. And I was a baby Christian at the time. This wasn't like me 20, 30, 40 years of like reading the Bible, like sitting in a prayer closet all the time. This was like God was hooking it up early on for me. So I can't give credit to anything else except for God, but like there's a lot of other things that happened because of God.
And that's what I really hear when couples really go steady from the get-go. It's like there's sort of this approval stamp from God, like on it.
Yeah.
There's something that's supernatural. And that was our relationship too, was something, I broke up with Brody after 3 weeks and, we got supernaturally guided back together, and I did things that I didn't want to do, and gave him a hug and a kiss, even though, so you do
like
things that don't make sense. Right?
Yeah.
Some things like carrying the relationship, or, you're acting out of character. Normally that was the end for a relationship, for you. And this particular time is just like, it just something carries it, right? So I feel like that's I resonate a lot with what you share,
Yeah.
And then so when you met each other, and then what was the first sort of few weeks like? Because you were living in different cities, you know what I mean? And so we have a lot of women who are like, okay, we live in different cities, and we're kind of long distance.
Yeah, or I'm afraid I'm not going to hear from him while we're
Right.
apart, and this is all going to be
Right.
just a nice little fling or dream, that
Yeah.
we had this amazing date, and now it's just silence, like he leaves you on red again or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I was definitely
She
nervous
had those
of
fears,
that.
yeah.
I was, because like, so the night before, after we like had like basically like 4 dates in one day, we ended up making out that night.
Ooh,
and I usually
naughty.
didn't kiss guys.
Spicy.
I know. I usually didn't kiss guys on the first date. So it was like, I was breaking my rule, which granted, like you said, we were friends via Instagram for, I think it was like 9 months or something leading up to this. So, so I kept saying, like, while we were making out, I was like, I can't believe I'm making out with my Instagram crush. This is so crazy.
Should say that out loud.
Yeah, I was like, out loud to him.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I don't.
Wait, like I
I
said,
can't believe I'm making out with my best friend. You're like a brother to me. Why am I?
No. I said my Instagram
Yeah, I
crush.
know, but
Yeah.
I thought you said Instagram friend.
No.
No,
No,
my
no.
Instagram crush.
crush.
Okay.
No. I was
Right,
like,
that's
best friend. No.
different. Yeah.
I was like, I had a crush on you for like all these months, and now we're making out. Like, I don't know. Like, you think about the person you have a crush on Instagram. You see them from afar. You see how, they're so hot, and you're like, oh, that's really like with that. And then one day you're like making out with them. You're like, what the frick? Like, how am I making out with this guy I've been watching online for 9 months that I had a crush on, So I was like saying that to him. And then I think I was like straight up being like, I think I did say something like, are we just, did I say this out loud, or maybe I was just thinking in my head? I was like,
is this a one-time thing?
yeah, is this like a one-time thing? Like, I don't think I said this out loud, but I do remember thinking, I hope he isn't just like making out with me right now because it's like this pretty Southern California girl, and he's just like in town for like a business trip, and then he like goes home and like regular life continues on. So I for sure did have that fear. And I knew that was like a possibility, I guess. So I was like willing to be vulnerable, to be like, I guess I'm willing to take that chance. And then, like I said, like right when he, like after we went to that coffee date, and then he drove away to the airport that morning to go catch his flight, and he texted me within like in 5 minutes. And I was like, okay. I was like, so he's still texting me. And then we like FaceTimed every night for like 3 hours a night. And what's kind of cool actually is that I had started a 21-day prayer challenge. And so it's so wild as our date was on like day 16 of that prayer challenge. And I obviously didn't know that I'd be like seeing him or anything like that when I started the prayer challenge. So I started the prayer challenge, and I was actually talking to 3 other guys. So he was like, I actually had one of my best
She was
friends.
shooting her shots.
Yeah, I was shooting my shots, like I said. And one of my best friends came from it's a kind of long story, but I'm actually from Colorado, but we have no mutual friends in the state of Colorado. So I had to move to San Diego to meet Nicholas and Amanda, to meet Frankie. Crazy. But one of my best friends from Colorado came to visit, and I was telling her about the 4 guys on my roster. And I was like, okay, so there's this guy, and there's this guy, and there's this guy, and there's this guy. And one of the guys was Frankie. And I remember being like, okay, so like my Instagram crush has been like flirting with me a little bit more lately. Like he's starting to like, after he went to Tony Robbins, and I still remember being like, after Tony Robbins, he started to be like, actually flirt with me, which all the times prior was like very, yeah, literally. So I was like, okay. I was like, my Instagram crush is flirting with me. That's cool. And then she was like, no, he lives in Colorado. You don't like living, you don't want to live in Colorado.
You were wrong, McKenna.
Yeah, McKenna.
Just kidding.
So she was like, you hate Colorado. It's not going to work out. So she's like, I would cut him off the roster, and then I would like focus and then cut this other guy and focus on those two. And so we were like having those conversations. And then when Frankie and I went on that first date, the next day I called the other 3 guys to let them know that like I was done, because I just knew so quickly that he was my person.
Wow.
And then on day 22, after my prayer challenge, it was 7 days after our first date, Frank and I were FaceTiming, and he was like, I feel like I'm like a cheesy like schoolboy right now, but like, will you be my girlfriend? And I was like, yeah, I will be. And so we became boyfriend, girlfriend 7 days after our first date. And
I was in Vegas on a work trip.
what does that have to do with it?
Just like I remember. I just remember.
Okay.
But I remember like where I
That's how
was.
the
It's all
marriage
the
goes.
debauchery. He's like, I need to really settle down. I need to get a girlfriend.
You always remember where you like those
were-
big
yeah.
moments happen.
Okay,
I was like
okay.
in the hotel room, like smiling the whole time.
Oh.
But what would you say to answer his question about like, I know you work with a bunch of clients around who have those questions of, okay, well, we're doing long distance. Like, what if he doesn't respond or call? Or like, what was your specific question?
Yeah, it was more like just managing
Well,
Or you might ask
anxiety
it,
or
but
trust issues.
Yeah, like worry.
or-
Or
your
fear.
insecurity. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like you didn't have a lot of that coming up because Frankie was so consistent after your
Right.
amazing date.
Right.
So you didn't have the opportunity for that. But maybe to go back a little bit too, because there were periods before you got to that point as well where he was leaving you unread. And maybe you had some anxieties about how the date could have gone because he was your Instagram crush and you're going on this date with an Instagram crush. So maybe to go back to some of the mindset in those moments when he wasn't as available or you had more uncertainty,
Yeah.
how were you managing your own thoughts and emotions in that process to stay open and, like you said, vulnerable, to have the courage to be vulnerable? How did you get yourself to that place of being open and available and not trying to chase him or being really insecure or jealous or asking him if he's dating other girls or whatever he could have
Yeah.
gone to, potentially with other women?
Yeah, I think for me, because I just knew what a catch I was, what a catch I am. Although now I'm obviously a catch.
Ain't
for
no
my-
one's catching
catch for
you
my
anymore.
husband now. But
Oh, I just
Yeah.
love how you
But-
just did that, Frankie.
what'd you
Catch for
say?
me.
What?
He was just claiming his territory.
Oh yeah. What did he say?
It's like nobody's catching you.
Yeah. No one's catching you.
You're just.
I already
throwing
got you.
Yeah, you got me. You got me. But yeah, I think I just knew my high value. So when he didn't respond, I honestly, like, it hurt. Like, it was a little bit like, oh dang, like, all right, that's weird that he's not responding. Go ahead.
Because some women might, in that situation, like totally write a guy off, or even sometimes get angry, like, well, I guess we're just not, you're just not interested. So I think we should just be done here, or something like that. So I call it the wounded animal.
Or
Sometimes
ignore him next time. when
women
he
will
checks.
get left unread and they'll get resentful about that. So they'll
Yeah.
either send a nasty message or they'll block him or do something
Yeah.
like that.
You did get resentful a couple times.
Ooh, let's hear
Okay,
about that.
we'll dig into that. Well, because I was gonna say I was doing a Q&A on my Instagram recently, and people were asking the same question, like, how did you not get super anxious when he didn't respond to you, and
Yeah.
how did you not get like
Yeah, that's
pissed
what
and
I
all
wanna
that kind
know,
of stuff?
yeah.
I don't know.
Or if you did, like, how did you recover
You
from
did,
that?
remember when you did? Tell the story,
The-
the short story of the scavenger hunt.
Okay, the
'Cause
scavenger
that
hunt
made
is
you
real.
really mad.
Okay.
You were about to write
Yeah,
down.
let's hear about that.
Okay, so we'll talk about the scavenger hunt. So Frankie and I had never
She's not
wait.
perfect, folks.
Yeah, I'm not
It's high
saying-
value, but
It'll be
we all
like-
have our little things.
Hashtags.
Well, I was gonna say, like, within the messaging on Instagram, I didn't ever get mad when you didn't respond, because I was literally just like, I was talking.
I know. We were friends.
I was talking to a lot of other guys. Like,
you were.
when you're talking to a lot of guys, you don't care as much when one guy doesn't write you back. You're like,
Well, that's actually a good point. That's a good point right there, is the fact that you were dating other guys.
Yeah.
Even when you were on this date with Frankie, you had 3 other guys you were dating,
Yeah.
which is
You
also
have
true for us
options.
when me and Antia were in our first dating stages before I claimed her as my boyfriend. Like, she was dating another guy. So
That's my girlfriend.
I think there's, as
You
my
said it,
girlfriend.
boyfriend.
Well, I was the boyfriend, whatever.
We know what you
They
mean.
get it.
We
We'll
know
edit that out.
I just want to make sure that no misunderstanding.
she's
Yeah.
a female,
In
everyone.
this day and age, we have to clarify.
True.
Unfortunately.
True.
But yeah, so there's something to be said, I think, about keeping your options open until a man has really claimed you.
Yes.
Right? That you're not going, that's part of I think being the high value piece is you're not just waiting around. So some women who come to us, they're putting a guy on a pedestal and they're like, I'm not interested in anyone else. I don't want to talk to anyone else. Like, this is my guy. And like, he's the only option. And they cut off all other opportunities, which who knows, if you would have done that to one of the other guys, you wouldn't have even gone on a date with Frankie.
Yeah.
So you kept your options open and available because none of those other guys, it sounded like, were really claiming you.
Right.
Or that you felt that kind of connection with, and they probably weren't claiming you on top of that. So how did you, so that's just a good point.
And also to add into that, to your point, even if I had gotten in my mind, oh, Frankie Vignone, my Instagram crush, I'm like waiting for him. If I had had that energy towards him, I actually wonder, like, then I would have been really hurt when he didn't respond to my DMs. And then I probably would have gotten very like angry and resentful and like, oh, what's happening?
Jealous.
You know, and jealous. And then I bet you we wouldn't have worked out because he probably wouldn't have liked that energy anyway, you know? So even with Frankie, but because everyone's on the edge of their seat about the scavenger hunt.
I'm on
This,
that.
let me
I've heard it 100 times.
Sweating with anticipation.
Okay, so I'm trying to, Frankie wants me to tell a short story. I'm going to try to go as short as possible. So I was flying home to Colorado because my family lives in Colorado. And anytime I would fly home, I would DM my Instagram crush, Frankie Vignone, and say, hey, I'm going to be in town. So just like every other time, I sent him a DM and said, hey, I'm going to be in town. Like, are you around or something like that? Well, he responded, was like, no, I won't be. I'm actually flying to Seattle the same day that you're landing in Denver. And I was like, oh, well, what time's your flight? Because we're both flying out of Denver International Airport. So I'm like, maybe we'll be able to like, because, wait, had we met at this time? Oh yeah, we met one time before this.
At your birthday?
At my birthday party. The first time we ever met, I flew home to Colorado and I hosted a birthday party for myself in Colorado. And I invited him, and then him and his best friend stopped by. And so we like met within a group setting. So that was my first time ever meeting Frankie. But our first date was our second time meeting in person, which was like 4 months later. Anyway, so the scavenger hunt was in early August for context. And so I DM him, we're going to be at the DIA at similar times. And so I say to him, okay, I'm going to do a scavenger hunt or something like that. And I'm like joking, like a winky face or something. And he's like, you won't. And I'm like, if someone says you won't to me, I will immediately do whatever they say you won't to, right? Because I will challenge that. And so I was like, ooh, okay. So then I'm like talking with my friends. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a scavenger hunt for Frankie Vignone, my Instagram crush at the airport. But I was like, I don't want to seem like a try hard. So, because to the point of this entire episode, you know, I was like, I don't want to try too hard, but I was like, I want to do something kind of cute, but not too much. So what I decided to do is I got like 2 little note cards, and one of them I left at C's Candy, like the little chocolate shop. And I put, roses are red, violets are blue, follow your nose to the coffee of brew. Because then the second part of the scavenger hunt was going to be a little coffee shop that was across the way. And then I bought him like a little chocolate caramel, you know, package with chocolate caramels in it. And I told the C's Candy girl, like, hey, there's this really hot guy, tall, dark, handsome. He's going to be coming through the airport in about 2 hours, because we were missing each other at the airport. So that's why we had to do the scavenger hunt. I'm like, he's going to come in 2 hours. So like, give him this little present. She's like, oh my gosh, this is so cute. I'm so excited to be a part of this, blah, blah, blah. And then I go to the coffee place and I write, roses are red, violets are blue. Sorry to disappoint. This scavenger hunt is a through. And then I buy him a $15 gift card for that place. And as a side note, they like made a really big deal out of it. And I was like, I need to talk to your manager, because they told me no. And I was like, no, I'm not taking no as an answer. Go get your manager. So he goes and gets his manager. And I'm like, hey, I'm leaving this present for this guy, tall, dark, handsome. He'll be through in 2 hours. If he doesn't come, you can just keep the $15 gift card yourself. You're welcome. So yeah, I do that. And then what I send Frankie is a picture. And the picture is of C's Candy. And I like took the angle of the picture where you could see like what gate I was at and like the number. So he'd be able to put together. And I text him the picture. I go, first hint of the scavenger hunt. He responds like, ha ha ha, or something like that, right? He like probably doesn't really get
I thought she was kidding.
He didn't really get the extent of what I did.
I'm like with 2 of my best friends who are like going to this guy's trip, like not really prioritizing this.
And then on top of that, do you want to go ahead and share that in your part of the story?
Oh yeah. So we somehow DIA, if anybody's ever flown from Denver to DIA, it's like at least 30 minutes. This time it took us like an hour and a half because there's so much traffic. So we roll up there and there's like 3 different gates to get to the gate, 3 different trains to get to the gate. So long story short, we basically almost missed our flight. So I had no time to do the scavenger hunt. So
and they were at 2 totally different like parts of the airport.
Like,
so
there's
you
no way
had
this
like
is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he texts me and he's like, oh, sorry, I'm not going to make it for the scavenger hunt or something like that. And then in that moment, that's when I got pissed. And I was like, this
throw me off.
child. So I'm like, goodbye. I got lots of other guys in the roster. Like, you are out. And so I did. That was my one moment where I got pissed and wrote him off because I was like, he obviously didn't know to the extent of what I did. I thought he like would know that, like, I told him I did a scavenger hunt. I sent him the first clue of the scavenger hunt. It's pretty obvious, you know? But now I understand his perspective. The fact that he would have missed his flight if he had done the scavenger hunt makes sense.
So what do you mean by you wrote him off? Did you send him a message or did you just
no
ignore him for a while? Or
that'd be weird.
What did you do? Just nothing? Or you just in your mind you wrote
mentally?
him off?
Yeah, mentally.
Okay.
No, I went out.
Her and her girlfriends had some gossip.
Yeah, I think I texted my two friends who helped me think of the ideas, and I was like, dude, he is such a loser. Like, he's like gone, you know, like,
Look at
bye.
me now,
Bye. But no, I didn't send him any message. Like, he was probably sending me still some flirty messages, and I was like, probably playing it cool, like I didn't care. But in my mind, I was like, all right, I don't think this guy's the one, because I feel like if he was really the one, he would have done my scavenger hunt.
I love that approach.
Oh my God.
Do you know how many
The ultimate
times
test
I
of a
hear-
man. Will he do my scavenger?
Will he do my
That's how I
scavenger
know
hunt?
He's the one.
It's like
Yeah.
a simple test to pass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially
You
when
can start
you
using that in your
Yeah,
While he's
content.
running late,
From one
even
end.
though he's running
If
late,
you
he
just
still
fly
would do
through
it.
it.
I don't think I knew he was running late. I think he didn't really communicate that much. He was literally just like, hey, I'm not going to make it. And I was like, what do you mean you're not going to make it? And maybe you're like, yeah, I'm running a little late
That's
to my
why
flight or
communication
something.
is so important.
So I don't think he knew that I put time and energy into the scavenger hunt. Then I didn't know he would have missed his flight if he had done my scavenger. You know what I mean? So on both sides, we didn't really know what was going on. Granted, again, we were just like two
friends.
pals that were, you know, there
It's a
wasn't
very
anything going on
confusing
really.
situation all around.
Yeah.
That's why it's important. Yeah.
But it's like interesting what you said, right? Like if he loved me, he would do this. And I think a lot of women do this, right? They said like,
Yeah.
well, I had so many rules. I'm like, you have to wait this long. You have to say this. You can't call 5 minutes late off of your head to leave your phone number. If you really loved me, you would respect me from the get-go. And so oftentimes I wonder, you know, I mean, for me personally, it was about a little bit sort of this wanting to punish someone, you know, because it felt so good to the ego to be like off of his set, you know what I mean? Because it makes you superior because you just did something and now it makes you feel inferior because you're like, oh my God, I just poured my heart out and you just trample all over it.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels like that in that moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so I wonder if there was something like that for you going on too, about like wanting to subconsciously punish him.
Yeah, probably a little bit. And I would say, like, thinking about like attachment styles, I definitely like my more natural attachment style is not an anxious attachment. It's more the
Avoidant.
Sort of
I'm more avoidant. It's like my
dismissive
natural.
avoidant.
That would make sense.
So that's why, like, to me, it's like I'm if someone like pisses me off, I'm less likely to be like all anxious and stuff. I'm most likely just be like, bye. But that's not always healthy. So I've had to like work on, you know, within our marriage, not avoiding things and really pressing in.
Yeah, not closing up and punishing through silence and things like that.
But I will say, this sounds probably bad. I'd be curious to know your guys' thoughts, but I feel like within dating, leaning a little bit more to the avoidant, like guys always pursued me. And I think it's because I was never in my anxious. And so like, I think that slight avoidant actually made guys like really come after me because I was like a little bit detached, which is has a good side to it. But also I'm also saying there's like the negative, unhealthy side to it.
Totally.
So I'm not trying to say that's all like healthy. And again, I'm very imperfect. But I think that's why when sometimes like when women ask me a lot of like anxiety type questions, I just never struggled with that because I was more on the avoidant side of things.
100%. And like, you want to say something first?
Well, yeah, I was going to ask related to that because you mentioned before how you're like, I knew I was a high value woman. I knew I was a catch. But women most of the women, I would say in our audience, are on the more anxious side as well.
Anxious
Similar.
avoidant. They have a
Yeah,
good
or
amount of
anxious avoidant.
avoidance abilities to dismiss men if they don't follow the lead or the plan too. So
Yeah,
I'd say it's both, you know?
or lower confidence. So how did you know? Like to get to that point, that's a bit of a leap for a lot of women to get to that point where it's like, I know I'm a catch. I know I'm high value. And yes, you said you were more of an avoidant attachment style. So it could be just how you were always kind of operating. And maybe it's just like a fish doesn't know that it's wet. You were just always knowing that you're a prize or your high value. But was there anything that you may have done or that might have helped you, some thoughts or belief shifts leading up to that got you to be at the place where it's like, I know I'm a catch. I know I'm high value.
Yeah. I struggled a lot with confidence, like in high school and college. And a lot of it was really more like depression and even like suicidal type thoughts. So I definitely wrestled with that side of things. I'd say I probably always had charisma, which is why I think it's so important for people to realize there's a big difference between confidence and self-worth and charisma. Because even when I, my thing, if anyone reads my book is called Flex Your Confidence Muscle. It's on Amazon and, you can buy it anywhere. But in my book, I talk about kind of the journey of this. So I'll just touch on it very briefly. But I actually believed I was going to die in a car accident for 8 years of my life. And that was like until it was like all of high school and all of college that I thought I was destined to die in a car accident. And there's a lot there. So I know I'm kind of like dropping a little bit of a bomb, but I experienced freedom from that right after I graduated from college. And it was because my Bible study leaders, they walked me through a deliverance session and called the spirit of death out of me. And literally from that day on, I started to believe that my life, that I was allowed to live my entire life. And so that was like such a game-changing moment for my entire life, because I no longer thought that I was destined for death. And because I thought I was going to die for so many years, I would tell myself like I shouldn't get married, because I'd be like, well, I don't want to die on my husband. And I definitely don't want to have kids because I don't want to die on the kids. So like a lot of decisions I was making actually were tied to this belief that I was going to die. So like I'm trying to share some of my story, because it's not like I just was walking around confident all the time. But even when I believed I was going to die young, I still presented myself as a confident person because I was charismatic and outgoing. And so I was presenting like an aura of confidence. Mm-hmm. And so for me, like my whole journey was learning that like my life actually matters, and that I'm allowed to live my life to the fullest, and that God created me for life and life to the fullest, and that God has good plans in store for me, and that God loves me. And just like I started to like really believe in my life. And I think that is what started to switch things. So a lot of things, I was in a 6-year relationship. Right when I got delivered from the spirit of death, I broke up with him because I knew he wasn't my person. And I would literally tell myself like, oh, he'll figure out that we're not supposed to be together when I die. Like that's how deep it was. Wow. And yeah, it was bad. And so it was very crippling for a lot of years to believe that I was destined for death. And it's kind of crazy because the more I've shared this on podcasts and within my book and stuff, the more I have women reach out to me saying like, oh my gosh, I've never shared with anyone before that like I thought I was going to die young of cancer, or I thought I was going to die young of this or of that. And so I do think that sometimes like I guess what I would say is I experienced a very deep version of my life doesn't matter, and therefore nothing that I do really matters. And then having that completely shift in my life and start to be like, my life matters, and God is good, and God has good plans for me. That'd be the biggest shift that I made, that then allowed me to start to believe that my life mattered. And so I broke up with a 6-year boyfriend. I moved from Colorado to California. I completely changed my career path. I started my own business. Like every decision I made from there on out was like, I get to live my life. Like I almost feel like I hear stories of people who almost had like a near death experience. Like they got ran over by a car and they almost died, but then they like survived, and then their whole life like transformed. I feel like I, in a weird way, underwent that because of my experience. And so that's really what kind of started to change, is that I was like, I got to live my whole life. And then that's changed a lot of things. And even after that though, I was still probably settling a lot in relationships where I was like, I can either have like a really strong Christian guy who loves Jesus, morals and values. We have the same faith. He's a great guy. I thought I could have that, or I could have someone who was really hot and really sexy and fun and passionate and playful. So I had this limiting belief that I could have one or the other. And so I would date those two avatars a lot of times. And so it wasn't until I really started to do a lot of this inner work of starting to understand like, what limiting beliefs do I have? What's the truth? What do I want to believe? And really believing that God is a good God. He's not asking me to like, I think I just thought he was like mean, or like wanted me to like marry someone who kind of sucked or something, but like at least he'd be a nice guy or something. I created all these weird narratives. And so I think as I began to heal the narratives and realize that God wanted to give me the desires of my heart, and that I could have it all, and I don't need to settle. When I started to shift into that mindset, that's when Frankie ended up entering the picture.
Yeah, so your high self-worth and high sense of knowing that you're a prize, you're a catch was really derived from that, just knowing that your life matters, that there's a reason why you're here, that you are inherently valuable, that you're God's creation and you have value because he created you perfectly. And so that's kind of where it derived from, right? It's just kind of this spiritual awakening almost that you have and casting off some of those spirits. So that's beautiful.
And also I do believe like what you went through, that it gave you dimension, it gave you depth. That, you know, I always say if I hadn't gone through my challenges, how shallow I would be, you know, like the shallow aspects of life that I would pay attention to. And maybe I wouldn't be where I am today, you know, the coach, or you wouldn't be able to empathize with other women, right? Because you'd be like, yeah. But like you would actually like think, I don't know what you talk about. You know what I mean? I had like a glorious childhood. I had a glorious and all the things, right? So I think it adds to your charisma. That you have gone through this, you know, almost like fortifies it. So that it's not just like sort of on the surface, but it's like it just generates it without you having to do anything because you've gone through the deepest, darkest valleys that someone could go through.
Yeah. Very, very well said, Antia. Thank you.
So when you...
I was going to ask Frankie a question.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do too.
I'm curious, Frankie, after you guys started dating each other or really became boyfriend and girlfriend even, or that after that date, that amazing date that you had, what do you think inspired you? Because you texted her right away and you kept pursuing her. What do you think inspired you to keep pursuing her? Because you had it sounds like a healthy masculine feminine dynamic going on after that date, especially where you were like moving things forward, you were leading the relationship forward. What do you think inspired you to keep doing that? And how did that also expand through your relationship up till today, where there's anything that Janelle has done that's inspired you into continuing to be that leader, continuing to move the relationship forward, being masculine to her feminine? Have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, what inspired me is like just the fact that I knew right away, and I knew that I got to continue to progress things forward, and had the opportunity to try and because she is a high value woman. So you have to continue to pursue high value, you know, men or women, whatever side you're on. Right. And for me, as like, I always wanted to do stuff to, pursue her, to like show her I loved her, to show her I cared for her, to amaze her, to wow her, to, show her that this wasn't going to be like a normal relationship, like nothing she's ever experienced before, like nothing I've never experienced before. So that was being more intentional with my communication than I had ever been before. That was being more vulnerable than I had ever been before. That was, you know, planning stuff, like planning dates, staying up till midnight or 1 a.m., which I go to bed at 10 p.m. So like that was a huge sacrifice for me. So like all these little things that I knew that she was my person. So I had the opportunity to show it and prove it, not just by saying like, oh, I love you, or like whispering sweet nothings, but actually like proving it in my actions. And I would say like what has made our marriage so strong, we're coming up on 5 years actually this month, at the end of this month. But what is one thing that has made our marriage so strong is that, in my opinion, I think I do a really good job of, we go on date nights pretty much every single week. I tell her how much I love her. I tell her how much I am proud of her, how much I support her with the work that she's doing. Like I just try and every single day just infuse that into our marriage. And she does the same thing for me. And I think that's what makes our marriage so strong, and like our dating life so strong leading up to it. It's just something that I truly believe that will never go away, and I don't want it to go away.
Yeah, we're committed to the honeymoon phase forever. That was a quote that we started really early in our relationship, because a lot of people would be like, oh, you guys are in the honeymoon phase. That's so cute. Like, just wait. And we would literally speak that over our life.
Yeah,
and we'd
we
be
had
like,
that so much as well.
We were like saying we're forever honeymooning.
Let's go.
Oh, forever honeymoon. There you go.
We haven't trademarked it yet, so don't steal it.
No, but yesterday we were going on a
Your
date night, and you know, we really had sort of this moment. We're like, oh, it's like almost like our first date. And then like the couple next to us, the woman like smiles all at me, and she's like probably thinking we're like newlyweds, you know, because I'm pregnant and all the things. And I'm like, if she only knew. You know what I mean? But that you can have that, right?
Yes.
Like that you don't have to like, and I think part of it is by being so authentic and transparent and real and raw, right? You can really grow together and connect at that deepest level of intimacy.
Yeah.
That it doesn't hit the plateau, because I feel like so many times people say, oh, after 2 years, you're going to hit the plateau and it's just going to be a routine and you're just going to take each other for granted. And, I totally agree. Forever honeymooning, baby.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Well, the other question I had was, and yes, you had something.
No, but Frankie, the question that I wanted to ask, how did you just feel like when Janelle was sharing, the deepest, darkest valleys that she's gone through? And because so many women are like saying, oh, if I say that, then my partner's going to think this is too much. This is too complicated, too heavy. I don't want to talk about this. Let's keep it light. So how did that feel for you? And I mean, obviously you've heard it before.
Yeah, or even the first time she shared that with you.
I mean, it broke my heart because I just love her so much, and just to think like, what would life be like if she wasn't here? Not just for me, but for the impact that she gets to have on so many people.
Totally.
And that's why I'm so proud of her, because I just know how much of an impact she's already had and she'll continue to have on people. And that's why like I will continue to be her biggest cheerleader. Like it's easy when you're looking at the other person and the work that they do to like encourage them, but it's hard when you're the one doing the work. Like you don't see the impact that you're making. So just to know the thousands and I mean, maybe even millions of lives that she's transformed and like the ripple effect that'll have, it makes me so proud. But I think, the first time I ever heard it, it broke my heart, but it brought us closer together.
Yeah.
And then it led me, she was more vulnerable than I was. And probably still is today, but it allowed me to step up and like be more vulnerable and share things that I thought I couldn't share either with somebody else, because they would judge me or it would push us away. But it's led to so many things, and we shared it very early on.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot.
Yeah, and just to get a last sort of overview of your guys' relationship and your journey, looking back to the place you've gotten to now, what do you feel were some of the biggest traits about Janelle or experiences you went through that just made you feel even more of like you just shared with the vulnerability piece? If there's anything else around that or similar experiences you had where it's just like, wow, I just really love this woman.
Yeah.
Or I just like something that made your heart melt or made you even more committed, more bonded, more devoted to her.
It's a great question.
And it could be traits
Yeah,
or
really
anything
good
she's
question.
done or experiences.
How much time you got?
And now you can massage it like all over yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, all over your heart.
Replay it over and over again.
The first thing as you were asking that came to mind is just how well she communicates, like her needs and her desires and her wants. Like
Beautiful.
every single woman I had dated up to that point was always like, oh, where do you want to go to dinner? Oh, I don't really care. Okay, let's go to Mexican. Get there. Why are we at Mexican? Like I really wanted to get Italian. It's like, that's a silly example, but like what I love about Janelle, and I've always loved about Janelle, is like, if she wants Mexican food, she'll tell you. If she wants Italian food, she'll tell you. If she doesn't care, she actually doesn't care. And that's like one thing that we joke about, because I used to, with like ex-girlfriends, I would have to make the joke, be like, guess where I'm taking you to dinner tonight? And then I would just wait for them to guess, be like, yep, that's right. That's where we're going. Because I didn't know where to choose. So it was like my little sneak attack to get them over the edge.
I saw that like a trend of that on Instagram recently,
yeah?
and I was like, yeah, my husband doesn't have to do that. Like I either have idea. If he says, what do you want? Then I'll tell him what I want. Or sometimes he'll say, what do you want? I'll say, I want you to plan it. I want you to surprise me. I don't care. I want you to surprise me. And so, yeah, I'm very, very straightforward, very honest.
Yeah. So the communication was big. And then also, and this was something new for me, and we're still learning it, but just like setting boundaries around and protecting your marriage, right? Like, and that includes from your family, from your friends, from work, and just like the importance of like putting our marriage first above everything else. And there are these interesting family dynamics where it's like, you bring those into marriage, or you bring those into dating. And for me, like, I'm very close with my family. She's very close with her family too. But Janelle had like already done some work previously to me where she was like able to communicate like, hey, we're going home. Like, I don't want to spend an entire week where we're just like at the parents' will to do whatever they want. Like, we need to have some alone time. Like, I want to make sure we go on a date during this time. I want to make sure like we have our own separate room. And it wasn't like all these ridiculous things, but it was just like these boundaries of, wait, oh man, to me at first it felt like rude to my family, but what it's done is it's protected our dating life and now our married life. So like she's so good about that too. Like she's a boundary queen, almost to a fault. But it has helped our marriage so well. So I could keep going on, but like the first things that come to mind is like clear communication and boundary setting.
When you guys are having conflict or any issues, is there anything she does that makes it better?
That makes the fighting better?
Yeah, or allows you to work through the conflict more effectively or in a way that it's more enjoyable for you.
Yeah, talk about being vulnerable. I mean, sometimes I have like a temper where I can like not blow up, but like get mad and yell, to be honest, if at my worst points.
Me too.
Luckily, like again, with Janelle's grace and God's grace, and I've gone to therapy and like have worked through like what that looks like. And if I get to that moment to walk away, but again, I would say it comes back to Janelle, like when we fight, like we don't yell at each other. Like that's probably 1% of the time. And it's my fault, not her fault. But like we just talk through things, and luckily there's a couple of different types of way to have conflict, like where you just go at it and fix it, or you kind of avoid. So for me and her, we just go at it and we fix it. So what I appreciate is like we sit down and just have the conversation, work through it.
I think what you were saying, because we had learned about like different conflict resolution styles. Some conflict resolution people like to resolve like later
Over
on
time.
in a couple hours or a couple days. They need a lot of time for processing. And then there's some people who like to deal with it in the moment. And when we learned about this from some of our like mentors, and they're also like marriage coaches, they were talking about how usually in a marriage there's one and one. So then you kind of have to have these conversations of like one person wants to resolve the conflict right away and one person wants to wait for a couple hours or a couple days. But luckily for Frank and I, we actually are both people who like to resolve conflict in the moment. So we just right in that moment, like we deal with it right then, and we don't wait till tomorrow or the next day. And so I feel like we kind of like even over communicate sometimes because we're just so open and honest with each other.
Is there anything you focus on, Janelle, as far as how you communicate your emotions to him?
I think like one thing I've worked on is like, I hate the word nagging because I feel like nagging is only used for women and not for men. And I think we both probably nag for different things. But I do feel like there has definitely been times where I've been like, and I still have moments like this. So it's not like this is totally healed, by the way, but something I've worked on and continue to work on is like trying to know the right time and place to bring certain things up, like littler things, like when he brushes his teeth and then there's still some toothpaste in the sink. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, how do you not see the green toothpaste in the sink? Like it blows
we
my...
have black toothpaste too with its charcoal, so it really makes a mess.
You can really see it,
yeah.
So like, it's like that kind of thing. It's like sometimes I just have to be like, okay, I want to just kind of like blow up on him and be like, I need you to just get the toothpaste down the drain. That's all I need. But like I've learned to be like, okay, sometimes it's not the right moment to bring it up. I am probably still going to bring it up, but like, let's wait till I'm not in such a like it's not like triggering me so bad and wait a few hours. Like when he's in maybe a better place, like instead of it, maybe we both work from home. So it can be easy to bring things up right in the middle of the work day or whatever. But I'll try to be like, okay, if something's like actually urgent and it's like a big deal, then of course we're going to talk about it right away. But I'm like, if it's the toothpaste, you can probably wait a few hours. And also like you can have, because I'm such a boundaries person, like I'm not the like pushover that's just like, I'll just keep like washing down the sink for him and washing out and not bringing it up. Like, no, I'm going to bring it up. But again, how I bring it up and when I bring it up is really important. And if I wait a few hours, usually I'm like a little bit less triggered. So then I can be like, hey, I just wanted to mention, your toothpaste is in the sink again. Do you mind cleaning that up? And so I can do it in a way that's a lot more gentle and also wait for the right time. So that's something I think I've worked on is like one, trying to be more gentle when I bring things up because I can be very like, intense and brutally honest. So I work on
intense.
Yeah, who me? No, not at all. So being more gentle is something, and giving more grace and waiting for the right timing would be like my stuff that I'm working on.
What do you think about respect in the relationship? Do you feel like there's anything you do in particular that may be helping to show more respect towards him, or the way to communicate your feelings respectfully rather than aggressively or potentially moving into like disrespect?
Or emasculating?
or emasculation.
Yeah. I don't get too terribly caught up on that, honestly. Like, I do respect my husband, but I think women tend to, as a whole, like, they a lot of times bottle things up. That's why, did you guys know that 85% of divorce is because a woman leaves a man?
Mm-hmm.
So 85% is because, and I think some of that, I know that like the man obviously plays a part, but I wonder how often it's because a woman bottles things up over and over and over again, or maybe she says things passive aggressively or little like comments here or there, but she's not really sitting down and being like, hey, this is a big deal to me. And the reason why this is a big deal, and like, this needs to change or else things aren't going to go well for us. So we've had those types of conversations before where I've been like, hey, this needs to change. This is not okay. And so in that moment, yes, I'm being respectful, but I don't get in my head around like, am I going to make him feel demasculated? Like, I'm like, I want us to have a healthy marriage, and a healthy marriage means clear communication. So I don't know. I just think sometimes women,
you don't. Sorry, keep going.
Well, last thing I'll say is I just think sometimes women trying to be too much in their feminine and too feminine with it is that actually they're like, and this is in the church a lot. And that's why I feel like I meet a lot of people at church, not our church, but other churches, that I'm just not impressed with their marriages. And I think it's because women just take way too many like submissive, they're just being too submissive. And I'm like, honey, yes, I get that like we're supposed to be, we just heard a whole message on this actually that I really liked that was explaining some of the, the Bible verse around women submit to your husbands. And it's really talking about alignment. And so I like the word alignment because of course, Frankie and I do want to be aligned and I do want to allow Frankie to lead. At the same time, I think that women can sometimes take the be submissive, and even men can take the words be submissive way too seriously. And I think it stops women from actually saying things they need to say. Even again, say it with love, say it with grace, but you got to be clear. And I love one of Brene Brown's quotes: "It's clear as kind and unclear as unkind." And I've taken that into Frankie and I's marriage and our relationship as like, I'm actually doing him a favor when I'm being clear and honest. I'm actually giving him a present when I'm being clear and honest, and him to me too. It goes both ways. But I'm not just going to sit back and be, perfectly submissive, AKA shutting my mouth, AKA not saying things that I need to say, just because I'm trying to stay in my feminine or something like that.
Yeah, being too compliant and just going along with something that you're not even
Yes.
doing, and then you end up blowing up later or being overly passive aggressive or
Totally walk on eggshells, that whole
just
thing,
go
right?
south.
And that's honestly, this is going to be the next topic for our next interview. Because
Yeah.
this is like literally,
Part two.
ladies, this is going to be like a whole conversation in and of itself.
Yes,
you know what I
I'm
mean?
down. Let's
I have
do it.
so many opinions on that too. So
Yeah, so what's the best way, because we're going to wrap this up today, but what's the best way for the viewers to get in touch with you, Janelle, if they want to learn more about what you have to offer?
Yeah, so I do have a free masterclass for anyone who'd like to attend. It's called Magnetize Marriage. So it's cool because we both have the Magnetize going. And it's 3 steps to attract your dream husband. That's totally free. So we can, maybe link that below.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I would say you can check out my book, Flex Your Confidence Muscle. And that's on Amazon or Audible or Spotify. You can just listen to it for free if you have Spotify Premium. And you can follow me on Instagram, Janelle_Lene.
Awesome.
Yay.
Love it. Well, hope this was helpful. If you want to take our free Magnetize Your Man quiz as well to get a loving, long-term committed relationship, we'll put a link for that below this video or in the comments or our website, magnetizeyourman.com. Much love. It was so great to have you guys here today.
So
Enjoyed the
much.
Yeah.
conversation.
guys,
Thanks
thank
for
you for
having us.
coming.
Thank you for having us. This is awesome. You guys are great podcast hosts. I'm like so impressed by your amazing questions.
Aw.
Yeah, and amazing answers. So
Amazing guests make amazing podcasts.
Yay. And thank you to everyone who took your time to listen. We really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to be here. Like, there's so many podcasts out there, but when they choose to listen to, your podcast, it's like, or, Frank and I have a podcast too. It's like, it's so beautiful that people do that. So thank you for your time.
oh yes, much love. Take care.
Lots of love. Mwah.